Good morning, everybody, and welcome again to the Places We'll Go show. Fabulous to have you with us. And once again, we're blessed with a stellar guest in Kate Rowlinson. But good morning, Kate, and welcome. Fabulous to have you on the show.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yeah, so I'm going to do a bit of an intro and flatter you, Kate. So Kate's had a long and illustrious career in the media industry, and she's CEO of the biggest media company in the UK, MediaCom. So we're going to get an insight into what it's like to be a CEO of a massive company, you know, how you get there, and is it all it's cracked up to be, perhaps, I suppose, is an interesting thought. Kate climbed through the ranks at MediaCom. She was MD of EMEA and then MD of Worldwide Hubs, so also a truly global experience to talk to. Moved into the CEO role 18 months ago. I suspect not quite as you'd maybe planned it, Kate. We'll hear about what impact COVID has had. And congratulations, I think MediaCom was voted Media Network of the Year 2020 for Adweek, and you'll have played a significant role towards that, of course. Personally, Kate won the Internationalists Agency Innovator of the Year in 2016. So I think we're going to get a great insight into how somebody leads a big company, but also Kate's people-first approach, in which she's very outspoken, particularly around D&I and calling on the industry to do more. There's been too much lip service, not enough action. So we'll get some outspoken views on D&I, I'm sure. And so more broadly, I think Kate's a humble and straightforward and honest person who creates cultures that deliver success. So I think that's going to be particularly interesting to hear more about how you create a culture that brings out the best in people. So wonderful to have you on the show, Kate, and I know our guests are going to enjoy hearing from you. So without further ado, I'll hand over to Richie to get us started.
Hey, thank you very much, Mark. And Kate, look, what an absolute pleasure to have you on this morning. Thank you for taking some time out to spend with us. Kate, a CEO within COVID times, what's it been like?
Yeah, it's been it's been a real roller coaster, I suppose. Yeah, I mean, I started the job in September 2019, so about 6 months before all of this kicked off. So I think I'm just grateful, really, that I was able to have that time with my team in person before all of this kicked off. And you know, and I think that really helped. I mean, I knew quite a lot of people in the business anyway, because I've been in MediaCom for 10 years now. But at least I had that time, 6 months leading up to the crisis, to, you know, get my thoughts together, meet lots and lots of people in person, which is something we just don't get to do anymore. So I think, you know, I was able to get out of the blocks in a way. And then when COVID happened, we had already a plan, some things in place. So I feel grateful that I was able to have those first few months. But yeah, it's been the best and worst of years, I think, is the way that I describe it in a way. I mean, I think, you know, MediaCom, the business, has been incredibly resilient. Our people have been amazing. So we've accelerated so many things in the business, but at the same time, we've been in the middle of this, you know, terrible crisis. So it's been amazing. It's been challenging, but you know, I'm feeling quite hopeful at the moment that we're on our way out of this, actually.
Yeah, that's a good wrap on it. I have to confess, I always thought that the Chinese proverb, "May we live in interesting times," was sort of a good thing. Clearly, that wasn't the intent of the proverb. But you talked about accelerating some things. So, can you give us a bit more of an indication about what some of those silver linings have been from your perspective?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I really wanted to do when I came in as CEO was to, well, the way that I talk about it is famous for digital. So I think MediaCom has an amazing reputation globally and in the UK. And we are known in the UK, you know, very much as a comms planning agency, a big scaled media buying operation, very good at building brands and effectiveness work. And I think we just weren't as famous for our work in digital and data as we were for all of those really good things. And I really wanted to address that. And I do think it was a reputation issue, because we we're doing amazing work in digital and data. And I just wanted to address that perception. And we have done so much to accelerate our position in this area. I mean, I put a new chief digital officer in place just as the pandemic was kicking off, actually. So poor Richard has spent his entire kind of new role in lockdown. And he's put a fantastic plan in place, which is all about accelerating particularly our platform expertise. So I think one of the things that I'm really excited about is how we're now setting ourselves up to be real experts in platforms. So, this is a platform world in which we're operating. So we're launching really interesting new capability around a Google practice, around a social practice, and e-commerce. So we've got new people in place in those roles. And it's really about, being able to deliver brilliant value to our clients by being deeply expert in these platforms. So that's one element, I would say. We've also done really well in awards because, obviously it's a reputation challenge. So we're doing loads of brilliant digital work. Let's just surface that work and be recognized for it. And I think we've done, really well in our awards digital. We're doing some great work for Direct Line Group as well, Mark, as you hopefully know, in this area. So, that's one element of acceleration. I think the other really big area of acceleration is in our diversity and inclusion strategy. So again, I laid out a clear vision that I wanted MediaCom to be the most inclusive agency in the UK. And I think we have accelerated so many initiatives this year, I think spurred on by the Black Lives Matter movement and the momentum behind that in the summer last year. We've done, I would love to talk about all of the things that we've done in that area, but I just think it's interesting, isn't it? Because the pandemic has been horrendous for so many reasons. People have lost their lives, their livelihoods, their jobs. But at the same time, it's been an amazing accelerant and catalyst for change. And I think we've really felt that within MediaCom and really had huge momentum behind our plans this year.
Kate, you've already hinted at, related to the catalyst for change, you've hinted at some of the key ways that you've evolved. And I'm sure that's very much in line with the way that you see the media landscape moving. But perhaps, talk to a little bit about, where do you see the media landscape going over the next couple of years? And how do you think that media mix is going to change? And then I'm sure we're going to come into some questions more specifically about you as well, of course.
Yeah, I think we've seen an acceleration of things that were already happening, haven't we? So I think we're going to continue to see the shift to digital and addressable media. I think we're going to continue to see the consolidation of that spend into two dominant players, Google, Facebook. But I think it's interesting to think about what the impact of Amazon will be, not just as a commerce platform, but as an ad medium with huge reach and data opportunity. So big shift to digital and addressable, obviously the shift to e-commerce, everybody just got comfortable with buying stuff online, particularly groceries. And we've seen huge shifts in that area, and I think, did you see the Heinz at Home stuff? I think even FMCG brands now getting into direct to consumer. So Heinz kind of selling their kind of bundles of staple products, direct to consumer. I thought that was really interesting. Obviously, the shift to subscription services. So I think Netflix has had a very good 2020, and I think the investments they're making in content production, kind of mind blowing actually. I think also I think it's really interesting to think about what Facebook and Google will look like in 5 years' time. I think, will we see more regulation? I think there's lots of, conversations happening increasingly around quality media environments, brand safe environments, I think we're having lots of conversations with clients around that at the moment. I think there's a really interesting development for me actually is in the area of creative optimization. I think we as MediaCom are getting increasingly involved in this area of creative optimization. I think there's been a huge focus on media optimization and its impact on ad effectiveness over, the last few years. But I think increasingly we're looking at how creative can be optimized, because you could argue in an addressable world you can't just have addressable audience. You can't just address people programmatically. You get very specific about audience targeting, but not always so specific about the creative that you put into that programmatic activity. So I think there's a really interesting development in creative optimization, and that's something that we're really very focused on at MediaCom globally, but also in the UK as well. So I mean, there's probably going to be, an emergent platform that we don't know about yet. I mean, I think TikTok has had a huge surge in the last year. There's probably going to be a new platform that we still don't know about.
Indeed, platform or platforms. When you raised a 5-year time frame, and pace of change is so much that who can possibly guess. But of course, as a CEO, you've got to think like that. And so you've got a massive job. I'm really interested to know how you got there. What was the sort of the way you weaved between the raindrops to get to where you are now? What was the path?
Well, I started, I worked at MediaCom kind of right at the beginning of my career. And then I left quite soon after that, and spent most of that time actually at Cara, and then came back to MediaCom about 10 years ago. And I think the big moment for me was when I returned to MediaCom, and it really felt like coming home. I think MediaCom is just a really special place for me. We overinvest in culture. Culture is so fundamentally important for our business. People first, better results is a real belief that we have, and the way that we are with each other. So it really felt like coming home. And it's not that I didn't enjoy the things that I did when I was away. I did. But when I came back to MediaCom, my career just accelerated. And I think that's probably something to do with, if you're in an environment and a culture where you really feel that you belong and that it just feels right, you can kind of achieve anything in a way, I think is the way that I look at it. And the other thing to say, when I was before coming back to MediaCom, I was working more in strategy, and I think I probably realized that wasn't my path. That I was an all right strategist, but I think there were people that were quite a bit better than me, and I was like, that's probably not my path. So when I came back to MediaCom, actually, it was to run new business across EMEA. And I think that just felt like a more authentic route for me, new business and then into management. But, I just think that my experience in the last 10 years, I'm on my 4th role. I mean, it is literally, I haven't stopped. It's been absolutely amazing. And also I'd never done a global job before. So coming into a job, a global role, running new business, by the way, just after coming out off my 2nd maternity leave. So I had a very young baby and a toddler, and I was doing a global new business job. And I did think, as I was making my decision, is this absolutely the most ridiculous thing I've ever done? Like, what are you doing? But I did it, and I've never looked back. It was the best decision I ever made. And I just feel so kind of at home in this culture, and I just love what I do. It's been amazing.
Kate, it reminds me of the saying, sort of feel the fear and do it anyway. It just seems remarkable in that sense. But what's also really refreshing about what you just said is that you weren't actually afraid to go back to perhaps somewhere where you felt more at home and more comfortable. So a lot of people leave companies, leave opportunities, and then almost get scared if they feel like they made the wrong decision, that they can't reverse on it.
Yeah.
And it just feels like not only were you able to do that, but then actually have an accelerated path to the top on the back of doing that. And that just, for me, it just really sums up that, people do just need to kind of almost go with their gut feeling sometimes and not be afraid to say when they need to U-turn back in. But clearly, there must have been plenty of bumps along that road and key decisions to be made. I mean, are there any that you perhaps reflect on as being some of those pivotal moments and maybe some lessons that you garnered from that?
Yeah, I mean, I think there was the decision that strategy wasn't my path. So I think that was one. I mean, there's always lots of challenges along the way. I mean, I think the thing that I came in to do a new business job, and I love new business for so many reasons. I love variety and pace and momentum. And so new business for me was great because it was like, right, here's a brief, new category, new brand, get your head into that, work, do the pitch, next, new category, new brand. And I just loved the pace of that. But I was really, really bad at losing. So I'm really competitive and I love to win. I am terrible at losing. And I think this was a big bump in the road for me because I had to learn resilience. And this is a very good thing to have, I think, particularly in this current time in which we're living and over the last year. And I mean, because you can't win every pitch. I mean, it's just impossible. And so when we would lose a pitch, I would literally be on the floor. I would take it personally. It was like I had, let everybody down and, it's awful. And of course, that's kind of crazy because you can't win everything. And it just really taught me to be resilient. And I still don't like losing. I mean, I'm not going to say that I've cracked this because I haven't. But, I learned how to be more resilient. And now I think it's, I think it was it Mandela who said, you don't fail, you learn. And I just love that because, you've just got to keep learning. You there's no failure really. You just got to take from it and move forward really. So I think that was a major thing. And I think as well, I think for a lot of women, frankly, the only thing that's holding them back is their own confidence, and I think I probably had that. And, I never really thought that I could be a CEO. And there was a point at which I did think that I could be a CEO. And that's when I spoke to Nick Lawson, my boss, who's now a global CEO, about the fact that that is what I wanted. And I think that's what I say to a lot of the people who ask me for career advice, particularly women, and, just tell your boss what you want. If they don't know, they're not going to be able to help you get there. So just be really open and honest about what it is that you want. So that was a really big moment for me when I actually thought, I can do this. I can, and I'm going to really go for it. And here I am doing this amazing job. It's amazing. I love it.
So Kate, you mentioned you hate losing.
Yeah.
I just wanted to pick up on that. Actually, just before I said that, great, just to capture great advice. Say what you want. So many people assume that everyone knows what they want.
Yeah.
Because it's clear in their own mind. So great advice, great quote from Mandela as well. But let's just go back to the losing thing for a second.
Yeah.
Because you on the face of it, you're very calm, very future oriented, very humble. Quite sort of in control. So where does that burning desire to be a winner come from? Can you trace back to and put your finger on where it comes from?
Do you know what? I think it's just in me. I can't really. I didn't do loads of sport. I mean, I did do a bit of sport at school. I did netball, which I loved actually. I actually played in a MediaCom netball team at the years ago when I was at MediaCom the first time around, and I was wing attack. Karen Blackett was centre. It was
Dream
quite
team.
funny. I was thinking about that. I'd completely forgot about that. But I don't know. I just think it's just a trait that I have, and I can't really. Sometimes it's actually incredibly not so much a positive, because I think when you are really, really competitive, you're always competing, and that can be like really exhausting. So actually sometimes it can be a bit harmful, I think. So I have to try and channel it in a really positive way. But yeah, I think it's just a trait that I have.
You know, Kate, and sort of just maybe following on from that a little bit, maybe moving more into sort of leadership. Because clearly, if you have that uber competitiveness within you, it obviously spars on growth in so many ways from business to people. Yeah. But do you ever sort of, or how do you reconcile sort of the more leadership side of it, perhaps where others may not see or have that same level of ambition?
Yeah, I think it's a really good question, because I think that, and that's what I was just talking about. There are negatives around competitiveness, and I think that I always want to move at 1,000 miles an hour, and I don't, and that's not. I have to check myself, because kind of exhausting for the people around you potentially, and I think it's important. I think in our business that we do move at pace. But, I've learned how to, it doesn't all have to be delivered tomorrow.
Yeah, I can see that. It's funny because Gary Vaynerchuk had this sort of famous quote, and he says that, and it's in relation to sort of business owners versus employees, but perhaps works in a similar vein here, when he says that, your employee will never work as hard as you because they just don't have the same level of vested interest as what perhaps owner founder may have. Yeah. Do you sometimes feel that be the case too, or is it not maybe the same in your context?
You know what? I think I come back to culture again. I mean, the thing that MediaCom, the culture at MediaCom is very much a culture where we are very, very focused on people. It's an amazing collaborative environment, but we like to win. And, we've been very, very successful by, winning and working with amazing clients that allow us to do our best work. And it's actually quite interesting when you look at the career paths of the senior leaders in MediaCom. And as you probably know, the senior leadership within MediaCom is very, very, long-standing. It's very, very, a lot of our senior leaders have been there for a long time. And when you look at people like Nick Lawson, our global CEO, Karen Blackett, obviously, who was CEO, now Groupm CEO, myself, we've all come through new business. So we've all done the new business job. So when I first started at MediaCom years ago, Nick Lawson was the head of new business. Karen Blackett also did that job. I did that job. And so it's a real path for, in fact, Steve Allen, I think was, he was a founder of the media business, but I mean, he was always so completely focused on new business. So I think it's interesting when you look at that, the career path. And so I think culturally, we really like to win. So there's a lot of that pace and momentum naturally within our, and we like to win for our clients as well. It's not just about winning new clients, it's about winning for our clients. And I think that really is ingrained in our business. So maybe that's why I fit in. I don't know.
No, it's very interesting, Kate. You talked to that symbiosis, incredible longevity, by the way, in terms of the senior leadership, But you may not know this, but when I was a doughy-eyed grad back in 1997, showing my age, that MediaCom was the media agency that Mars used on that particular part of the business. And there's still many, many people around. You mentioned something interesting about working with clients that let you do your best work. I'm just going to bring in a question from Keith. Great question. So do you find that during these times, clients are now actually being more risk averse due to the pandemic? So what's your perspective on how clients have responded?
Oh, interesting. I suppose yes and no. But I think, look, I mean, I'll give you, let's take Tesco as an example, who I think have had a very, really strong year and response. I mean, the work that they have produced in the last year, and I don't think this is just true of Tesco, by the way, I think it's true of a lot of clients. The work that they have produced has been unbelievable, really strong. They've got it to market really quickly. So if you think about that first campaign, when they did the campaign about how they changed, you know, laid out all their stores and made them COVID safe. I mean, I think that campaign happened in like a week, start to finish. And it also tracked really, really well. So it's actually one of the most successful ads of 2020 in terms of its impact. Amazing. And then when I look at the work that they did around food love stories, so they, you know, around Ramadan last year, they shot the anti-sumac chicken ad. I mean, I love food love stories. I think it's a brilliant campaign. And they shot that ad on mobile with a family in their home, and it looks amazing, and it's just lovely, and it has all of those amazing kind of warm emotional cues that food love stories ads have. So I think actually loads of advertisers just really, yeah, like a lot of the constraints were taken away. Just had to move really, really quickly, get things out to market. So I don't know. I mean, some clients had to stop spending and did stop spending. So maybe you could say that's risk averse, but actually if you're in travel and you've got no business at the moment, you kind of have to stop advertising in a way, you could argue. But I think we saw lots of bravery actually. And do you know, I was talking to CEO of one of the WPP creative agencies a few weeks ago, and she said to me, we've done our best work in the last year creatively. And I think there was that big debate, wasn't there, about, you know, is it harder to produce creative work and be creative when everybody's remotely working? And I think I certainly really worried about that as a CEO running a business. It was like, how are we going to do really strong creative work when we're not in a room together? And yet I think really good creative work has been produced, and she was saying to me, we've done our best work. So I think it's really interesting. I think there was a lot of bravery actually.
You know, Kate, it's really interesting you touch on that point. There's a book called Where Good Ideas Come From. I forget the author's name, but it's a really famous book. And in the book, basically they describe the difference between creativity when you're sort of batched together in a hothouse sort of brainstorm environment in a room, versus actually the most creative ideas come through over time, iteratively. Yeah. And then talking about the fact that actually digitization could help that process because you can get much more diverse a range of ideas that come through. Which for me really touches on sort of one of your other passion points, which is around D&I and that diversity of thought and of different types of people. So, I mean, where did that sort of passion point come from? And have you seen the net positive results in MediaCom from some of the efforts that you've been doing in this area?
Yeah. Where does it come from? I mean, I think that's a really interesting question. It's a bit like you know, why are you competitive? I don't know. It's just, I just wonder actually whether it starts with being female. So this idea that, you know, I think you soon work out as a girl growing up and as a woman that, you know, men have got most of the power, most of the advantage. And I just wonder whether there's a sense of injustice around that. And that drives a sense of, you know, I just think for me, everybody should have a fair crack of the whip. And I don't think they do. And I want to try and change that in my own small way within MediaCom, because I think this is about systemic change. And I just really want to change things. So one of the things that struck me when I started this job, I spent a lot of time with Nancy Langthorne when I started the job, who's our amazing head of D&I at MediaCom and also WPP, wonderful. And, you know, we had long chats around, you know, where are we now, the business, you know, so when you look at the data, we've actually got very, very strong diversity at a more junior level, like really good, like 40% Black, Asian, minority ethnic talent in our junior ranks. But actually, when you work through the business up to a senior level, you know, it really drops off. And I just really want to fix that. And I think there's loads of, you know, barriers and challenges. So we've done lots of things to change it. We've completely re-engineered our promotion process. So all roles are open, advertised, available to all, trying to get away from this tap on the shoulder. We have a very kind of open and transparent promotion process. We've also put a sponsorship program in place for our Black, Asian and minority ethnic people and talent, whereby there is an acknowledgement that it's not a level playing field, and certain groups need, more help, more coaching to build confidence and to really achieve equity, with others in the business. So the sponsorship program, where all of our exco, my leadership team and our managing partners, sponsor somebody in the business. And the whole point of sponsorship is that you advocate for that person. So you try and get them into a pitch team, you invite them to speak with you on a panel, you advocate for these people, and you use your privilege to help them progress through the company. So that's one of the things that we've done. The other issue that I'm really, really passionate about is creating an inclusive culture, because I think is that it's diversity and inclusion for a reason. So there's very little point, I think, in building a diverse workforce unless you have a culture whereby diverse talent feels comfortable, safe, secure, and that they belong. So we've done a lot of work around microaggressions and things that happen in the business that make people feel uncomfortable. And as a leader, you can either kind of lean into that and go, microaggressions happen, we're going to tackle them, or you kind of go, well, I'm just going to shy away from that and not deal with it. And I don't think the latter is an option. So we've spent a lot of time just raising awareness of microaggressions, and they're often unintentional, but if you're on the receiving end of a microaggression, it can be deeply, deeply hurtful and just, again, damage your confidence, send you back, not allow you to progress through the company. So we've done a lot of, I think, quite difficult work in this area, but I think ultimately, the result will be positive.
You've done so many things. I actually joined the MediaCom sort of share of all the things that you've done this week. Some incredible things. We'll just come back to microaggressions as well. Actually, so let's go there. On microaggressions, you did a video where senior leaders read out microaggressions that have been experienced in the company. So I wanted to ask you, and you obviously don't have to sort of refer to a particular period or a particular individual, but just to make that vivid, have you got any examples of microaggressions that you can share? So that's my first question. And you only have to speak to the extent you're comfortable, obviously. The second is, Nancy said something really interesting this week, which is that we've moved beyond seeing D&I as a USP. It's just more important than that. So I'd love to hear you talk to that specifically. Yeah, I have experienced microaggressions, and I think that goes back to the female, the gender thing. I remember doing some training. I was very, very young, early on in my career, and I was doing some training in negotiation, which is obviously quite important in any job, I think, but particularly media buying. And the guy who was giving this training is a really senior guy. Was talking about negotiation and all the different elements of that. And he actually said, so men are really good at this generally, and women aren't. And it was just, he actually said it out loud in a training session. I don't know if I was the only woman in the audience, but I'm like, what am I supposed to do with that? So I'm in this training learning about negotiation, and you're kind of going, yeah, but you're never going to be that good at it. And I just think it's that kind of casual misogyny and sexism that, is still sadly quite commonplace. And we've just got to call it out. And that's why I just believe so passionately that microaggressions, and actually, need to be tackled. And we are, as you know from that session, Mark,
the belonging survey that we run across all the WPP companies shows that MediaCom does have a really inclusive culture. And I think, well, that's good, but how can we be better? These things still happen. So we have to lean into that discomfort and try and tackle them. So the second question was around, sorry, Mark.
So Nancy said, we don't see D&I as a USP because everyone's sort of been thinking, oh, I need to be the best or better, or this is how we're going to get more talent over everybody else. And it just sort of stopped me in my tracks. Nancy saying, well, we were over that.
Yeah, exactly. So I think it's this idea that it gives you competitive advantage, and that you become really competitive around how you talk about this and seek talent. And I think as well, what I feel we really need to try and avoid, if you are, sitting there as a young Black person in this industry, and you're just thinking, God, everybody's just clamoring for me just so they can tick a box and, hit a target. I just think that's really probably quite stressful. And so what we decided to do was to say, this is not about competitive advantage. This is about doing the right thing across our industry to elevate the prospects of everybody, allow everybody to reach their full potential and create really diverse and interesting workplaces whereby we can do the very best work for our clients. So it was that difference between, it shouldn't be talked about as a competitive advantage. It should be, let's all work together to the benefit of everybody. And I think that was a really big pivotal moment for us, where we just thought, right, we're just going to share stuff. We're not perfect. We've done some really good stuff in MediaCom, but we have got so much to learn. And I think Debbie Klein from Sky in that session, Mark, was so compelling. The way that Sky have put their targets together, made really public commitment on those targets. I mean, I learned so much in that session, particularly from Debbie.
I'll just hand to Richie in a sec, but just to bank that point, Debbie talked to department and team level D&I targets. Yeah. And she said that ultimately what Sky is good at is hitting targets. So follow your nose, set the targets, but at a very, very crunchy level.
Yeah.
Which I've not heard that before. So yeah, that's a great thing to pull out. But Richie, back to you. I know you've got a good question lined up there.
No, not at all. But look, I think actually leading on from that, perhaps a question coming in from Craig is around, how do you know when you've cracked it? How do you know when you're doing the right thing? Perhaps coming back to some of those examples that you talked about with Sky. But I'll let you address that as well, Kate, about, how do you know when you've reached the goal? But I just want to add on Yvonne's question as well, because I think it's quite relevant to what you were talking about earlier about senior leadership and how it's progressing there. So she asks about, with all the work you're doing to drive D&I, do you feel that, that lack of representation at senior levels is sort of on a pathway to being cured?
Okay, so the first one, so how do you know when you've got there? Well, I mean, you have to measure it, you have to track. So we have the WPP Belonging Survey, which gives us very granular data around the lived experience of different groups within our business. And so one of the things that we know, for example, is that overall we are a very inclusive culture. But when you drill down into the different cohorts, there are discrepancies, quite worrying discrepancies. So we do that every year. So this is a piece of research that Karen Blackett initiated across WPP. It's amazing because it gives us loads of data to make decisions and create policy, but also track progress. So we will use the Belonging Survey to track how the initiatives that we've put in place is working. We also have targets. So we have set targets across our business, by office, by team. We've made team leaders accountable for those targets. So it doesn't just sit up here as a corporate target. Actually, there is accountability in the teams. So we will track that. So it's about progress through the business. Which leads on, I think, to the second question. This is not something that can be solved very quickly, I think. I mean, Sky have made a 5-year commitment. And And I think the senior level challenge is a really big challenge. And I don't think we're going to fix it very quickly. But we are absolutely committed to driving diversity, of all diversity, by the way. And I mean, I think, you know, obviously racial diversity, but also gender diversity, which we do very well on already at MediaCom at senior levels, you know, all diversity. It's tough. I mean, I think, you know, it's not going to be solved very quickly, but we are committed to doing it.
So, Kate, as ever, the time zips by and we're nearly out of time. We've got a few questions that unfortunately we won't be able to get to ask, but I'm going to end on the small matter of some advice that you would give to people about how to thrive in 2021. So what tips and advice would you give to people wanting to better themselves in this challenging year?
Get the vaccine. Tell all your friends to get the vaccine. I mean, it's the Queen has now said that we have to have a vaccine. So, I mean, look, I don't mean to make light of it. I think it's the most important thing that we as citizens can do this year, is to go get vaccinated. It's our only way out of this. I mean, I think, do you know what? Just be kind to yourself. I think it's been really tough this year. And honestly, I spend a lot of time being very anxious for my kids who are still off school, hopefully going back in a couple of weeks, you know, for just people's mental health, how they're feeling, just, you know, it's been really tough. So I think the best advice I can give you is just give yourself a break, be kind to yourself. It's been really hard.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. That's a lovely note to end on. So we are out of time. So unfortunately, apologies to anybody whose question we haven't been able to ask, but it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on, Kate. I'll do a bit of a wrap and then I'll hand to Richie to do his close as well. So you said so many interesting and useful things. This time has brought out the best and worst in us, but has allowed you to accelerate, and it's been a catalyst for some really positive things. It was lovely to hear you talk about coming home and the importance of fit, which was great. MediaCom, people first, better results. Alan Jope says the same thing at Unilever. You know, the key stakeholder is your people. Yeah. It all flows from there. The fact that you love what you do, great to hear people say that out loud. You know, it's okay to love your job. You obviously talked a lot about culture. We heard, of course, you're bad at losing and you love to win, but losing has also helped you to become resilient. But most of all, I think your closing words, actually, I love your advice that everyone should be kind to themselves and to others. So brilliant. Thank you so much for coming on the show, Kate, and just to Richie to say his words as well.
Well, yeah, thank you, Mark, and Kate, thank you. I mean, it was an absolutely brilliant session and loved every minute of it. I mean, you know, you kicked off, and for me, what really just stuck from the get-go was the sort of that feel the fear moment, what you said, just around, you know, going back and forth in your career, going back to MediaCom and then having this meteoric rise. Just amazing, as a great example for others who may be feeling a bit unnerved about where they should be in their careers. Just super to think about, you know, follow your passion, out of strategy, you know, into new biz, and then kind of, you know, go into that side of it. So that was great. The other thing around sort of, you know, the terrible thought of losing and then learning of resilience is great. And followed from that, when you talked about actually the pathway is around new business. And I think maybe there's some great insight about how all business leaders who have done really well maybe have had some element of that sort of really cold-faced commerciality, get the numbers in, get the business in, and that helps you in many ways to kind of get and you know, catalyst your career to the top. So I thought that was a really great insight there. In terms of the D&I space, you talked about some of that motivation around everyone having the opportunity to have a crack at the whip. And I love that phrase, and I love that phrase in that context as some of that underlying motivation. A bit about microaggression too. And I think all of us, as a bit of a watch out, need to be more mindful around those micro things that we may say and do and act, and yet we don't even realize we're doing it. So maybe there's some really kind of subconscious bias stuff going on there, which is interesting. And finally, you talked about, and to Craig's point, around how do you know when you've succeeded? Well, actually measure, right? Have the right targets in place. Be ambitious with that, and then, you know, thereafter it's a long process, but you know, at least you're on the road and you know where you're going. So, you know, amazing takeaways, Kate. Thank you so much for everything.
Thank you so much for having me. I've loved it.
Pleasure, absolute pleasure. Look, just everyone in the audience, just to let you know, of course, we are here every Friday at 8 a.m. So next week, we have the wonderful Serena Abbasi coming on. So do stay tuned and do come join us next week, same time, same place.